Hello and good morning. Good morning to everyone who's live with us. I know it's 11 a.m. today, and we are going to start our discussion on privacy on DPDPA, right? And let's see how it goes. I think let's let everybody settle in first, and then we will hit the road in another 2 to 4 minutes, everyone. So, folks, before we start, let's follow our tradition. I don't know if you have joined a 𝐶ARO consulting webinar before, but let's follow our tradition and quickly give an update on some data, some personal data to share with each other. How do we know where you are, right? Where are you joining us from? So I'm dropping where I am right now, and in the chat, in the comments, and yeah, you can also drop where you are and say a quick hi. Yeah, I have dropped this in the chat for the webinar. So in the comment box, if you can also drop it, we can have a great conversation from here. This is the starting of conversation with a one message, and then we can keep having our conversation as we go down the line, as we talk and discuss. Because today this webinar is for you, and I'm just here to share knowledge that we have acquired in last 3.5 years while working in the industry on consent implementations. So my goal here today is to give out all the information that I have and let you guys also work on your own information, your own subject knowledge, and then down the line you can implement these things by your own, right? And as we go down the line, right, as we go, we are 6 minutes past after the time, so we still have time, but I will still let everyone join in. And once everyone joins in, I think we had a lot of registrations for this, and we have 30 live people now. So we're just waiting for, let's just spend 5 more minutes and let people sink in, and then we will start and go ahead, folks. By the way, good morning. Yeah, how is your morning? Where are you right now? Why don't you drop it in the chat? Yeah, and from there we'll pick it up. And by the way, if you have not grabbed a cup of coffee, grab a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, whatever you like, and we will have a conversation after this. Hey, hi, good morning, Anuradha. Good morning, Prakash. Hey, Vikrant. Vikrant joining in from Mumbai. Okay, that's great. I'm also, this is my last week in Europe. I think after this, I'll also join you and join everyone from India, somewhere in Bangalore and then Delhi. Hey, hi, Rupali. Hey, hi, Anuradha. It's good to have you here. Hey, Prakash. Hey, Ashutosh. Folks, we're just starting. We're just getting into our life as well as, and meanwhile when we start, right, let's just quickly have a, Meanwhile, while we are having a discussion, right? So okay, so I think we are on time, and we are 10 minutes past our time. So we will probably get going, and as and when people will join, we will let them join. So I can see a lot of, hey Soumya, good to see you. Hey Vasu, it's good to see you as well. So folks, we are doing, by the way, Tsaaro Consulting as a firm now. What we're trying to do is we're trying to impart knowledge, and as much as we can, right? It's generally what also happens is our goal is to give small bites of knowledge to you through these webinars, and this is one of the webinars from our series of DPDPA. So this is our first webinar of our series, the consent framework, right? So what we're going to do is we're trying to give you some knowledge and trying to impart some knowledge. If you have any questions meanwhile, please feel free to drop them in the comments. And the comments are right in front of you. Please feel free to drop them in the comments. We will make sure that we answer them right now. If we won't be able to do that, we'll drop you a response on maybe the community or in the response. Yeah. Yeah. So a bit about Tsaaro. Tsaaro is a leading consulting firm in privacy. What we do is we do data privacy consulting in the market, and yeah, that's a bit about Tsaaro. And folks, just give me a second. Sure. I think I'm back. I'm back. I was facing some issues. I think I'm good now. Sure. So okay. So disclaimer for the day is this session is not a legal advice. What we're trying to do is we're trying to impart knowledge and share knowledge with you for reference and education purposes only. We do not we represent, obviously, so we speak for uh, the the company as a webinar, but still not speak for the exact. It's not the company speaking for themselves. Yeah. A bit about me. My name is Akarsh Singh. I am the founder and CEO at Tsaaro Consulting with Krishna. 3 years ago, we both started, and from there, we have been working uh, pretty sincerely to be here today. And in the last 3 years, what we have done is we have been working on Fortune 500 clients in India and US. And what we have been doing is we have been implementing privacy programs, implementing consent tools, reviewing their internal frameworks. So a lot of privacy work, governance work, as well as infosec work. That's what we have been doing generally. I've been in the field for around 8 years now, and after 8 years, after 4 years, kind of started on our own, and from there, here we are. And yeah, let's get going. So, table of let's just talk a bit about what is going to be, what knowledge are we going to go through today. So under DPDP, we want to talk about consent. What are these specifications to DPDP? Why? And I think let's also talk about it right now. Why are we talking a lot about consent, right? And since DPDP has come through, and talking about the final draft, which became the law, uh, what has happened is people have been very focused, right, on consent. The real reason behind the focus on consent is that either the option is you use consent, or the option is you use legitimate interest. Now, why are we talking about this, right? And I think a lot of times, especially I'm in Europe right now, and people ask me, what is different in India, right? And what is the difference in India and consent? So okay, so I have a question for all of you. I have a question for all of you before we move on. So legal basis, by the way, means that the ground for processing personal data. So the ground for processing personal data under Indian law, that means is if you don't have a ground, you cannot process the data, right? So okay, so marketing teams don't like me a lot, right? And sales, believe me, they just don't want to talk to me. And I keep saying this again and again. It's you cannot process personal data anymore, but you can find a legal basis for processing of personal data and then process it, right? It's fine. So what is legal basis in India? Consent or legitimate uses, right? There are two legal bases in India now. But this is not the case in Europe, right? And in GDPR we have around 6 legal bases for PII, simple personal data, and for sensitive we have around 8 to 9 use cases of, using grounds that we can use to process personal data. So where I'm coming from is, I'm coming from a thought process that, first of all, whenever it's a user, right, how will the data come inside your organization? Okay, I'm asking you this question now. How would data of anyone would actually come to your organization? Maybe a data form, maybe through data collection. Like if you go to book my show and you buy something, maybe you go to a particular payment aggregator app and you do a transaction, right? What I'm trying to say is, uh, there are 2 3 parts of this thought process, right? Now let's quickly think about it while we get more complicated, while things get more complicated down the line. Let's think about a UPI app, right? Till you are on the app about to do a transaction, at that part of journey you had given consent for your data to be utilized, correct? And what is the purpose of processing? Purpose of processing means, let's say marketing, let's say transaction, let's say monitoring, let's say security, right? These are all purposes of processing. So what I'm trying to say is, purpose of processing, legal grounds of processing, and then we reach consent, right? So let's do our basics first and then we get ahead, right? Okay. So what I'm trying to say is, purpose of processing. So while the journey of the customer data flows inside an organization, the purpose of processing keeps changing as well. Now the purpose has to be mapped to legal basis of processing. So now what I'm trying to say is, I'm trying to say, let's map consent, but then consent can be mapped to a user journey for a particular time, cannot be mapped forever, right? And what do I mean by that? I mean by that is, let's say you go to Flipkart, let's say you go to Amazon, and you look at, and you don't log in, you can still as a guest watch or see what type of, things are available. Now at that point in time when you didn't even log in, you can still see everything. But if you say yes to cookie, then again you give consent, which is a cookie consent. But still there is an identifier which can identify you, right? It may not be your name, but they can still identify which phone you are on. So then it's an obvious consent that is required. Now let's move on. Let's say you actually log into the platform, right? So I have been working with e-commerce a lot, and I'm just giving one example to you. Let's say you log into the platform, right? And you do not buy. Believe me, do not buy right now, right? Do not buy anything. Just create a new ID. Just log in. What happened? You checked the privacy tick box, you went in, and you started looking. So now what happened is you are being profiled, right? What do you like? And again, a lot of people, I think, kind of mistake also. I think privacy is not a blocker, right? Privacy, let me just put it again for everyone here. Privacy is not a blocker, right? Business teams, privacy is not a blocker, right? The goal that we're trying to say is let's be compliant and do the same things in a better fashion so that we can respect somebody's human right. Now, why do I say that? I say that because in this part of the customer journey, when somebody came on the platform, gave consent to the platform, and can now use the platform to see which app, which things are there, he's also getting advantage, right? Because he can now get suggestions based on his search history. So which is good also, right? Let's take profiling as a negative sentiment, right? Because I generally see all the privacy professionals, they're always behind profiling, they're always behind AI. They just want to say no, right? I want to say yes, right? I want to say yes, right? Let's be compliant and do it. Okay. In this journey, when you are in the platform, you give consent. Very well done. Now you bought something. When you bought something, the purpose of processing for that transaction using the similar data or add on to the data will change, because now the purpose of processing is not that a user is on the platform. The purpose of processing is transaction. Purpose of monitoring is tax. Purpose of monitoring is money laundering. There's so many things that can happen for that purpose of processing. So the same data which was intake by consent has now been shifted to a legitimate use. So it cannot just be governed by consent, but for the same data, the marketing purpose is still governed by consent, but not the other data set that you have cannot be governed by marketing. And that is the beauty of privacy, and it is not complex, right? People generally, whenever I'm talking about it, people come to me and say, Akash, is this a tough subject? No, right? It's, let's just look at data. End of day, privacy means data compliance, right? Listen to me carefully. Privacy means data compliance. And what does data compliance mean? Data compliance means for the journey of that data set, map the purpose, map the legitimate basis of processing, grounds of processing. It can be legitimate. Okay, perfect. Let's get going. Any questions? Please feel free to drop them in the chat, in the comment section. I am actually reading the comment section every 4 or 5 minutes, so that if you have a question, I can answer you. Okay. Okay. If you ask me, right, if you ask me personally or professionally, people generally ask me how much is, and I'm going to answer from an overall bird's eye view first and then get to detail. What is the difference between GDPR and DPDP? Right? What is the difference between US laws and India laws? What is the difference? Uh, I don't think there are a lot of differences, right? I do not believe that there are a lot of differences. What I believe is the nuances are different, right? Because culturally, every privacy law is a law on data compliance. Now, culturally, sensitivity wise, the cultures are different. So when the cultures are different, the data processing is different, right? And other countries are probably more mature than India, and we have to agree to that. So at our time, I think our laws make a lot of sense today, though there are things that we should specifically look at in our law, right? Like we do not have a difference between sensitive data processing and simple data processing like it is defined under GDPR or any other law. We do not have that. Plus, we have a few more guidelines incoming, still to clarify on things like time of data subject rights processing, things like our data protection authority. So we are still waiting on that. But 80 to 90% of the law has already been clarified by the law, and that is 80 to 90% similar to all the global laws. Now, why I'm asking this to you is, when you are implementing a consent tool, and Indian organizations are not only in India, right? And this is a fact, right? We are working across the globe. So what is it that you need to implement on your website, on your platform, so that you can easily run through the consent? So my suggestion to you, my 2 cents to you, is while going for this, always make sure that you have a central privacy thought process, right? A central privacy agenda, a central DPO to kind of have a central policy, and then differences can happen across the globe. Right? Some here and there can happen across the globe. Now look at consent. End of date is opt-in, right? So if we take all the consent requirements across the globe, choose the toughest consent requirements across the globe, we will reach to a similar conclusion. And I'm quoting similar conclusion, not the same. Right? There are still differences. Like in India, there could be an option when the user is, let's say, can only give consent in Hindi, or let's say he can only give consent in Tamil, then what will happen? He will have to think about, the platform has to think about giving the notice as well as taking the consent in that language. So again, even if we have a global thought process, if the language barrier is there, then again we will be, a bit in, so basically the user's thought process has to, and again, these are all general logical conclusions that we reach. It is not something that you need to use a lot of brain. It is simple general conclusion, right? Companies generally want to move away or not follow some certain circumstances just because they do not want to spend more money. They want to save, 50,000 rupees. I would rather say, but that is not the way we should be going, right? It's a general consent. Let's look at the world's toughest things in consent. Just implement them, right? Okay. So if there is a consent, right? If there is a consent, there has to be a notice, right? Consent is followed by a notice. Okay. So my question to all of you, right? And let's do a quick Q&A. When we look at consent and notice, do you think that a website privacy policy is enough to satisfy the notice? A website privacy policy is enough to satisfy the requirement of notice? Quick question to everyone. So what are you thinking? What is the requirement, right? See, every time you think about privacy policy, privacy notice, or a privacy statement. So if you go to Microsoft website right now, you will find a privacy statement. But if you go right now to Uber's website, you will find a privacy notice. But if you go to other companies' website, you will find privacy policy. So what I'm trying to say is, it doesn't matter what the name is. The name of the document on the website which is giving you the notice doesn't matter as such. What matters is the crux of the document. So what matters is, when you are about to give consent, you are getting the information that is needed before you sign into that platform. And what is that information? That information is the same thing that we've been discussing right now. What is the legal basis of processing? Where is the data going to go? What is the journey of the data? What are these third parties where the data is going to get transferred, right? And what do these things they come under a privacy notice. So the goal is to give the notice. What do you name it? How do you give it? It's on you. It doesn't matter much, right? So globally, I see a lot of disconnect in overall naming conventions. I would always try to name it a statement, because a statement sounds better than a policy, and you can add the policy into it as well as different notices into it, and people can down the line go, which we generally call a layered privacy statement, so that everything is layered. And again, if the company is small, let's say you know 1,000 crores, and below revenue, I don't think a lot of thought has to be given, because when you are under $1 billion, the goal is also to focus on business. So you can give more specific consents, or a bit more, uh, or you can build your own consent tool, right? You can always do that, right? And a lot of organizations which I'm working with today, they generally ask me like, I'm about to buy a tool, will this solve all the problems, right? See, the thing is, let's just think about it. The moment you go to a platform, right, and in that platform you try to say delete my data, or you go to Facebook and you try to download your data, right? Have you tried doing that? Okay, even before that, on what legal grounds of processing is Facebook processing your data? On what legal grounds is Facebook processing your data? You are on Facebook, right? I mean, WhatsApp, Instagram, or Facebook. And I do not just mean Facebook, I mean three Meta as a platform. You are on Meta, I'm guessing. A lot of people here in the chat are also in the community I am part of. So I'm very sure that all of you are in that platform. Yeah. Yes, no? Okay. Okay, I'll take it as a yes. So the basis of processing is consent, right? Contracts. For the purpose of processing of our messaging, it's consent. By the way, I don't disagree with Nikhil here in the comments, because I was reading a fine by Irish authority to Meta, and it actually mentioned that that they processed on the basis of contracts for some reasons, for some purposes. But I'm saying, like, let's not complicate it in India, right? And it can happen, right? It can happen. And we also recommend our clients that after the user has bought something from the platform, right, then make sure that the requirement is not consent for that purpose of processing, because the problem with consent is it can be revoked. So anything that can be revoked, we cannot trust that for long term, especially when we have to do financial monitoring, when we have to file for taxation. Because everybody, a lot of times we think that organizations are just taking data. How can we? Okay, I think Avinash has a great question. Mr. Avinash Sharma asks, how do we take consent of illiterate people? Okay, so Avinash, I don't know how much this is going to be, how much I'm able to answer you, but great question. What happened with me is I got shocked actually. I'll tell you short story. I was in Delhi, and Delhi has a lot of NGOs. And a very good friend of mine, he introduced me to a client, and he said, Akash, why don't you come to office and we'll have a conversation? I went to their office, and what they used to do is they used to do surveys, right? In smaller cities across India, right? Towns, like where people do not know how to speak or read. So, and this is a conversation that happened there. So this is not clarified by any law, but it has to be a oral consent, right? So when you go to someone and people cannot read it, then you have to explain it to them and then take the consent from them. So generally, if you record this consent, it's better and safe for you compared to just going them and ticking it up. So there has to be certain way to finalize this, but I have not seen a solution to this. This is was my advice to them at that point in time, a year back when I was in their office. So thank you for asking that. Okay, so what are these, what are these important things, right? And when I say important things, I mean to say the framework, right? So what is the framework that we have to build, follow, copy, paste? Okay, not copy paste, not copy paste. I was just trying to have fun with all of you. Do not copy paste, right? And I was actually, and I don't know if you have seen that, right? I was sitting in my, so I do not know how much information I can release for you. But I was sitting in a office, like 3 4 years back, somewhere down the line with a few friends of mine, and we were just we have always been consultants, right? I've always been a consultant all my life. So I was sitting with someone, and then we asked the other person, and they said, Akarsh, we have taken care of privacy, and you do not need to stress. You can audit, and you can tell us where we are wrong. I was like, okay. And we were so confident, these are senior people, right, who are giving confirmation that everything is fine. And we're like, okay, make sense, right? This looks good. And then we asked them, like, how did you approach to this privacy policy? Like, you have created a privacy, and again, I mean privacy statement. I'm talking about the external privacy notice. So they said that our competitors have had a great privacy notice. So we are also in same business. They are also in same business. So why not, right? We did it. We understood it. We did one course, and we watched a YouTube video, and here we are. And yes, see, the thing is, it's not wrong to, and I won't say it out loud. I don't think it's wrong to learn like this, right? You should definitely learn like this. Even if you have a consultant, even if you have an external tool, ask questions, right? And it's not rocket science, right? Nothing is rocket science in our field. But the logic of privacy is personal, right? It's a human right. So when it's a human right, it's about your customer, it's about your employee. So you have to understand what are the purpose of processing for them. Until and unless you figure that out, uh, you just can't do anything about it. And this is something that I have been repeating a lot, that purpose of processing, is the third eye of privacy. Until unless you open it, it's nothing's gonna happen, folks, right? It's you can go around the circle, you can take consent, you can get people to sign contracts, right? But end of day we are all bluffing, right? Because we don't know exact amount of processing. And now the next question I think you have for me is, how do we know that? And again, this is my general conversation across conferences, across my team, and across market. Is the first thing that we do is we start with data mapping. my my com data always start with gap assessment. I'm like, how do you do gap assessment without knowing what data or what are the purpose of processing? You just cannot do that, right? And again, I'm not here to tell you we are better than them or they're better than us, but generally as a concept, right, the market is, see, privacy is not like security, right? So do not just copy paste, because you cannot understand anything without the purpose of processing, without doing the data mapping, even at a basic. So start with data mapping, right? My advice to everyone, start with data mapping, then do whatever you have to do. First, find the purpose of processing, talk to your teams, get that done first, right? Understand what is the type of business you are, what is the high risk data you are processing, right? What are these high risks? Like for Tsaaro, the high risk in consulting, right? The high risk is our employee data, right? It's not the customer data, right? We have limited customer data. But when we were working in Tsaaro Academy, right, we're not working anymore on that, the customer data was priority, right? So what I'm saying is, depending on the type of business and depending on the type of seriousness has to come through for privacy, right? And that's where it starts. Who's more risky and which departments have it? So ask these questions and then get to work. Okay, So if you give an option to, if you take consent, right? If you take consent, right? If you ask someone, right, can I do this? Then that person can also come and say to you, don't do this now. If you ask someone permission to do something, then he can say no, right? Let's take an example. Let's say somebody, uh, let's say you go to IKEA, right? One of the best examples of consent, by the way, right? Amazing theme of privacy. Let's go to IKEA, right? In IKEA, uh, you do not like something, right? Or you do not want to buy from IKEA anymore. So what will you do? You'll go to IKEA and you'll say, delete my user ID. So my question to all of you is, can they delete your user ID? Like really? Are you kidding me? So how is the right to deletion respected? Or can they? Or will they? Question to you. So can they delete your customer ID? Right? Can this happen? Yes or no? So my last episode on my podcast, right? I've been really busy since last few months, right? So I've kind of missed out on my podcast. But my last one, if you search Privacy Cast on YouTube, you will find dating and DPDP. I think my suggestion is go through that, right? Just have a look. Uh, it's okay. No. Okay. Answer is coming, right? Answer is no. Okay. So Rupali and Dipali have mentioned that no, it cannot happen. What about others? They might use it for marketing purposes. Okay. Okay. I hope the IKEA team is not reading it actually. So okay. So what I'm trying to say is they will delete actually. They are the one of the organizations which will actually delete your data. Though the purpose of processing when it was marketing, when it was using the platform, the data will get deleted. But for the purpose of processing for tax and financial work, as well as the overall, let's say, money laundering act and stuff like that, they will keep the data. So data cannot be deleted even by an organization. You know what I mean? If you go to Facebook and if you do not do a transaction on Facebook and you ask for deletion of data, the data can get deleted because the data was only on the basis of consent. So when you take consent, then you have to respect consent. So while the purpose of processing for a certain user journey is consent, the data will get deleted. Your organization has to delete the data. By the way, in India, we also had Puttaswamy judgment, I think in 2017 or 18, which led to a lot of laws in privacy in India. And right to deletion is already there. So in India also you have to delete, right? So you cannot just keep the data. So yeah, it's very interesting, right? It's you just cannot just keep the data, right? You have to delete under the law in India, but for the purpose of processing on which it depends, right? That is where we are. Okay, so there's a bit of difference in consent for children because anybody and you we all know I think 18 is not the right age, and I keep commenting on this across that we need to have 16 or something like that, which Europe did, right? Europe was like Europe kind of actually didn't do one consent age. In Europe, it's like 14 is the minimum, right? So if you look at Sweden, I think they have 14 years, and then if you look at Germany, I think they have 16 years, something in that fashion. But in India, unfortunately, right, and I'm just having fun with all of you. 18 is the minimum age for children, right? So if you're below 18, you are a child, and your parents and your guardians have to give consent for processing of your data. Can you believe me, right? And what would everybody do? Everybody will just go and say, yes, I am, above 18. So it's very difficult to see how this gets implemented. Even by organization, it's a huge challenge, because I'm telling you why. Because in my whole journey in privacy, what I've seen is all organizations, when they generally, if you go to their privacy notice, they will say, we do not accept children's data, right? We do not want you on our platform. But unfortunately, they all are on that platform. They all have phones, right? And they're all on the platform. So it doesn't make sense to have 18-year as the gating age. So and mandatory, making it that guardians have to give consent. So we will see how it gets implemented. But for children data specifically, more laws would be coming, right? Like we have the Digital India Act, as well as more, data processing or the overall governance act that are coming. So I think all will get clubbed in another 3 to 4 years in policy, and at that point in time, I think it will get more complicated and more complex. But I think for now, organizations, if let's say, like, we are a consulting organization, right? Why will we get customers below 18 years of age, right? We do not have something like that. Neither anybody is applying to us who's below 18, so we are fine, right? We can at least go back and say, hey, uh, not a problem, right? But if you are Flipkart, if you're Amazon, if you are, you know, I don't know, Cred, there could be a possibility that people are using these platforms for payment or using this platform for buying something. So what I'm trying to say is, we cannot just miss this out if you are in B2C business, right? So we think about it more carefully, comparatively, than a general thought process. Okay, moving on. Consent manager, I do not want to talk about it today because nobody is talking. I'm sorry. The rules may or may not clarify about consent manager still, right? That is my hunch, and that is my 2 cents on rules that are coming. So if they will not clarify, I think we still have to wait for more clarity as to what does the government want, because I think the government also is trying to understand how can this work, because a consent manager can be a person with the board, but still, like, the technology for consent manager, right, that we have been discussing for last 4 5 years, I think that technology somewhere got missed, like it became a name, like for compliance. So if it's a name for compliance, it can be that one person inside an organization who becomes the consent manager, but not a tool right now, right? So a lot of people actually come back and ask me, like, how do we solve this automatically, right? Automatically, nothing happens, right? It's in this consent manager thing, people can promise, consent tools can promise, but end of the day, they all are the same, right? So I think price factor becomes an important factor. Plus, in consent tool, there are specific requirements, like you have to keep the consent for a certain period of time, or you have to map the purpose of processing. So every tool cannot do that, right? So you have to just think about and analyze when you're using using something for yourself, right? So just analyze a bit more, say, okay, this is my user journey. If let's say somebody revokes, then does it connect to my okay, one more quick thing. Let's say somebody revokes consent. Can you allow his data to be deleted through that platform? It's a no. If you use an external tool, it will be very difficult for you to, and again, I'm not against tools, by the way, but I'm just telling you, right? It's Think about this. An organization will never allow an external tool to have access to the database and to let delete the data. The tool can delete the data, right? Think about it. Nobody will allow this. So in case, right, you are a company with a lot of employees, right, or a lot of customers, right, um, you have to go in a journey where you build something on your own, because it may not, first of all, it may not work out for everyone. And again, consent tools work great, amazing, best tool in the market. We are partners with everyone and we are implementing it across. But I'm just talking about organizations which are focused on customer data, right? Let's say Facebook. Now, which tool will Facebook buy? OneTrust? Obviously not, right? Or Big ID, because they have to do it, because think about how complex their overall environment is. Though OneTrust and Big ID security, these are the best tools in the market, right? And we have to give it to them, that amount of hard work that they have done. But still, can they allow, right? To at what level will the tool get access in organization, right? That is the most complex thing that we have to think about. And again, I'm just talking out of my experience, right? These all the things that I'm telling you may not be true at all. So I'm just speaking my experience, and I did not do a lot of webinars in last few months as well as podcasts. I'm back. I'm just trying to do more, and I'll probably see you similar times every Saturday or every second Saturday. So if you are listening to me, if you want to hear this more, let's just take some topics and talk about it. But I want you to talk to me, right? Like in comments. If you cannot talk, it becomes difficult to talk. Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's take some questions and then we'll get back to. Okay, so Dipali, if somebody uses it for marketing, consent can easily be revoked, and that is the first line of action for consent. Yeah. In case your organization is not mature, start with a blacklist. Okay, start with a blacklist, right? You have to start with a blacklist. Okay. Okay, Avinash Sharma. Okay, it's done. Yes, Ashutosh, it has to be, regulatory compliance, and then it can be archived definitely. But also, Ashutosh, is not just about archiving. When we're talking about deletion, it's not just about archiving. Even if your finance team has data, that who bought, let's say, insurance, or who bought other things. Insurance is also a good example, right? Let's say you give consent to an insurance company, but after 5 minutes you sign a contract with them. Now you will need insurance. You cannot just go to organization and say, hey, stop my contract, or I do not want data it cannot happen, right? Let's just be honest about it, right? Because once you are insured, then your data is with the company and they are going to use it and they're going to keep it. So if you are an insurance company, you also need to work, and you need to say, hey, if a customer comes tomorrow and says this to us, we have to say no to them. We have to say no, we cannot delete your data. That is why we are preparing for ammunition, right? That is why, uh, and this is what is happening in market, right? People, you cannot just respect a user right? You have to think about. Okay, so Rupali, what option do we have, right? It's We cannot do anything about it. We have to, think, wait and watch, right? We can request at max a data deletion. And if you're not satisfied, the data was deleted and you have some evidence, what are you gonna do? Probably a LinkedIn, or probably that's exactly why the data protection board is coming. So you can go and complain to them saying, hey, we asked that data has to be deleted, but it is not deleted yet. Okay, and they will get fined, right? And guys, fine is not the only motivation for organizations to work, right? Fine is not the only motivation for organizations to work. The real motivation to work is brand image, right? The real motivation to work is brand image. Okay. Vasu. Mr. Vasu asks, account aggregate. That's exactly what we're talking about. Consent managers are not account aggregators, right? And we were trying, I think, as India, we were trying to go there, right? But it's not happening. We it doesn't it's not easy, right? You cannot just use Aadhaar, and Aadhaar has its own problems, so we do not have a unique identification ID right now in India. The only option that we have is Aadhaar. So until we have one more ID, maybe, which is the unique ID that everybody's talking about, maybe things get mapped to that. But Aadhaar's law doesn't allow, I feel like that. And again, this is all something that can happen, right? But how will you get consent, right? What is the basis of getting consent? What are the options? I'm saying, even if, let's say, central aggregator is built, then how will the technology work? Right? It cannot work, right? The logic is defying itself. So when the logic is defying itself, we all can't help it. right? So what I'm saying is, what is going to happen for next 5 years, next 2 years, is a person is going to be designated a consent manager, and yes, ho gaya, finish, khalas. That's what is going to happen, right? And again, that's my take. Please, okay. So opt-in basics, opt-in. Account settings start with maximum privacy. Account settings start with maximum privacy. Notice is a mandatory option. Consent withdrawal has to be easy and clear. Okay. UI needs to be clarified. It cannot happen that you have a dark pattern. By the way, India also gave out dark pattern guidelines, I guess, for the same reason. It also came through. So you cannot just use a dark pattern and sort this out. Okay, let's come back to problems. Okay. Vasu, I have not seen anonymization being called out as much, neither privacy enhancing uh, um, things like, from that level. I have not seen. Maybe the rules will have it, maybe, but I kind of feel it may not. I kind of feel it may not have it also, right? So let's see what happens. But this is where we are. Okay. Consent for internal analytics. Yeah, I think Shilpa, I think this is where I'm with you, right? Consent has to be taken if it's an internal analytics or it's an external analytics, right? Okay, perfect. And what's my view? Okay, and I have a question for you. Like, what do you mean by internal analytics? See, if it's an employee, he's bound by employment contract. So the internal analytics that can happen will happen through legitimate interest in India. So under legitimate interest, you can do a lot, I guess. Right? Okay, I didn't say that. I'm a privacy professional, guys. Sorry, I should not be saying that. You can do a lot. Come on, like sign the contract, get your things done. At least for a few years, right? Till we hit the deadline, till people are educated enough to be able to complain. Companies can do that, right? I think generally what I see in Europe a lot is people come back, and again, this is again my opinions or my personal thought processes, uh, and while I kind of keep giving disclaimer that a lot of things are just for fun as well. But what I've seen in Europe is people are using DSRs as a mean of making money. So when somebody is not happy with the company, they will go out and they will start filing DSRs, right? So that they can make 10,000 euros, 20,000 euros. And that is where, the dirty things start happening. Because now everybody who's unhappy with you, when you're letting them go, they're going back and using these things, these means too, but these were not meant to be used like this. So the problem will start in India as well once the data protection board is on the table, which we are seeing another 1 year to that. And I think that's exactly where we'll see these things happening, right? And we will talk more about it, right? But for now, if you ask me, it's under legitimate interest. Define the purpose, give the notice to the employee, let him know what is going to happen, and just do it, right? Until unless somebody, and again, as he's bound to contract, right? If somebody is bound to consent, then we can still say no. Okay. Okay. Okay, so we talked about minor consent. We talked about minors consent, and this is the last topic we'll take for today. We'll pick for today. We'll do more on consent, right? Let me just kind of come back to you again, right? Till here we have done. We'll pick it up from some live examples, right? Today I faced a few challenges while sharing my screen. I'm able to share my screen, right? So while after I told you I'm doing a webinar after a long time, I'm not able to share my screen, and I don't have Krishna today, and I miss him. We could have done some things in the back end. Okay, so signing a consent form, right? And this is exactly what happens in schools, right? If your kid is in school, you would have seen that you sign the consent form, and you give that form, or you, let's say, do it online using an Apple Pen or something like that, right? So basically, it's a consent form that you sign as a guardian, and then it goes ahead. Okay. See, okay, we all have seen these things, right? Which says, I am 18 years old and above. Come on. And everybody says yes. But can that be enough for kids? It cannot be. So what do we do about it, right? We have to have and think about a 5-year-old kid, right? And I'm saying let's leave somebody who's 14 or 10 years old. My nephew, right? And he's on the phone all the time. When he's using the phone all the time, he can also download apps. So how app has to do the gating, not the parent or the guardian. Parent and guardian also has to do gating, but once he is inside this world, then the app has to do the gating. And the app cannot say that I asked him that I was 18 years old. Right? It's pretty shameful now, right? When we are living in a data world. So the app has to do the gating. Yeah. So once you build an app for kids, then you build a consent framework for the kids. And this is a basic that has to be followed, and especially to protect our children's data down the line and our small minors data in our in the country. We have to be really really serious about it. Calling a telephone number, is one or more option. Verifying a picture ID is another option. A video conference is another option. A credit card or debit card is another option. But these are the only few options. You cannot just say yes, right? So let's kind of come back and say no to yes. Okay. So folks, thank you for joining me, and thank you for having so many questions from me. And I so much appreciate when whenever I'm working or I'm on a webinar and I see so many answers. Uh, I think a lot of people, I mean, amazing privacy professionals are also on the chat and responding. And I think I feel privileged to have everybody here. Thank you everybody for joining in. And I will see you next time. What I will do next time is I will actually go back and show you, some platforms. And if you want to see some platforms right now, my session is Go with IKEA. I really like how their consent framework works, and they're in a good discussion in all the communities that I'm in, for the amount of effort they have done in building the consent framework across the globe. And then, if you want to see differences in consent frameworks, go to Airbnb. If you have what do we call it, VPN, try to use VPN for different countries, right? And this is it's 2 cents, right? Just if you want to check how it works, just use VPN, go to Europe, US, India, see how it changes. Because it's local, right? If you look at Airbnb, organization booking, the biggest organization in the world, just try to learn from them, right? When you're implementing, learn from them, right? But don't copy paste, right? It doesn't help long term. And folks, that is all for today. And I wish you all the best. And thank you for joining in on a Saturday. And I'll see you again, and have a nice day. See you, folks. Bye.